My mother slid the folder across the kitchen table like it was a dinner bill she expected me to pick up. "Sign it," she said. "Your sister needs this more than you do. You've always been the strong one." I looked at the folder. I looked at the woman who had just told me, with a straight face, that the $67,000 she had drained from our joint savings account was actually a gift I should be grateful to give. I did not yell. I did not cry. I pulled the folder closer, flipped it open, and read every word of the document she had prepared. Then I closed it. "Let me think about it," I said. My mother smiled. She thought she had already won. She always did. I need to back up. Because what happened in that kitchen didn't begin that morning. It began the day I was born into a family where love had a clear hierarchy, and I was at the bottom of it. My sister is 3 years younger than me, and 11 years more important. That was never spoken out loud, of course. No one in my family would have admitted it. But the truth lives in the details. When I graduated high school with a 4.1 gigapascals, my parents took my sister out to celebrate her middle school spring play. When I got my first promotion at the firm, my mother called to ask if I could loan my sister money for a security deposit on her first apartment. When I bought my condo at 28, saved for 4 years, denied myself vacations, packed my lunch every single day, my mother came to see it once, looked around, and said, "It's small, but it's fine for now." Then she called my sister to tell her about it, and I heard her say through the phone, "Don't worry, baby, we'll find you something nicer." My sister's name doesn't matter. What matters is what she represented in my mother's mind. She was the soft one, the pretty one, the one who needed protecting. I was the capable one, which in our family's language translated to, the one who could handle being last. I handled it for 31 years. The joint account was my mother's idea, pitched to me as practicality. "What if something happens to you?" she'd asked when I opened it at 24. "What if you're in an accident and I need to access funds?" "Don't be stubborn, sweetheart. This is just smart planning." I added her to the account. I never thought about it again. Over 7 years, I deposited my savings into it, faithfully automatic transfers from every paycheck, bonuses, tax returns, every windfall I ever caught. My mother never deposited a single dollar. The account was mine in every real sense except the legal one. I discovered what she had done on a Tuesday. I was reconciling my accounts before a meeting when I noticed the balance. $67,412 should have been sitting there. Instead, the screen showed $216. I thought it was a glitch. I called the bank. The customer service representative was patient and professional, and told me in a calm voice that the account holder of record had initiated 3 separate wire transfers over the previous 6 weeks. The transfers had gone to an LLC. My mother was the registered agent. I asked the representative to repeat that. She did. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat very still at my desk for about 4 minutes, staring at the corner of my monitor, where a small smudge had been bothering me for weeks. And then, something settled in my chest. Not rage, not grief, something quieter and more permanent. It felt like a door closing. I did not call my mother. I did not call my sister. I opened a new browser tab and started making a list. What I did not understand then, what I have come to understand since, is that there is a specific kind of parent who mistakes endurance for consent. My mother had watched me absorb 31 years of imbalance without collapsing, and she had interpreted that as permission. She believed, truly believed, that because I had always managed, I would always manage. She had categorized me the way people categorize a load-bearing wall, not something to appreciate, but something to build against. Something that holds the weight so the beautiful things can be displayed. I call it the infrastructure fallacy. The parent who raises one child to be strong and another to be cherished, then spends the rest of their life treating the strong one like a public utility. They flip the switch. The lights come on. They never think about the wiring. My mother had been flipping my switch for 3 decades. She just forgot that the person who installs the wiring also knows how to cut it. That Tuesday, I did not confront anyone. I opened a separate account, at a different bank, and began moving what remained of my accessible assets. I called my attorney, a woman I had worked with when I bought my condo, and asked for an emergency appointment. I spent 90 minutes in her office the following morning with a printed bank statement, a copy of the account agreement, and a very clear question. My attorney had sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She reviewed everything, asked 3 clarifying questions, and then told me what my options were. I listened carefully. I chose the ones that didn't make noise, at least not yet. The thing about moving quietly is that people who expect chaos don't recognize stillness as a strategy. My mother expected me to call, screaming. She expected me to demand answers, to threaten, to cry. When I did none of those things, she filled the silence with her own narrative. She decided I hadn't noticed yet, or that I had noticed and was being mature about it. Either way, she felt safe, and feeling safe made her bold. She called me 5 weeks later on a Sunday afternoon. "I need you to come to dinner next weekend," she said. "Your father and I want to talk to you about something. It's important." "Of course," I said. "Should I bring anything?" She hesitated. surprised by my warmth. Just yourself. I brought more than that. My parents' house was 40 minutes from my condo, a colonial in a quiet suburb that my father had refinanced twice to cover debts my mother never fully explained. When I arrived, my sister's car was in the driveway, alongside a dark sedan I didn't recognize. The kitchen smelled like the pot roast my mother only made when she wanted something. Good sign. She was still performing comfort. That meant she wasn't afraid yet. The dining room table was set for 5. A man I'd never met was already seated at the far end, mid-50s, gray suit, a leather portfolio in front of him. My mother introduced him as a family friend who happened to be a contracts attorney. She said it casually, the way you'd mention the weather. My sister sat across from where my mother pointed for me to sit. She was wearing the expression I had seen on her face since childhood, the one she wore when she knew something was coming and was glad it wasn't aimed at her. A sympathy preemptively applied, like sunscreen, before a burn she didn't expect to feel. My father sat at the head of the table. He was not a cruel man. He was something worse, a passive one. He looked at his pot roast and cut it into small pieces, and was very busy doing that. My mother waited until everyone was served before she opened the portfolio. We wanted to do this as a family, she said, because we believe in being honest. The truth is, your sister's situation has been difficult. She glanced at my sister, who nodded with practiced vulnerability. The business has had some setbacks. We didn't want to burden you, but there were some gaps that needed to be filled. We used some of the family account to help stabilize things, and now we just need you to sign a document acknowledging the transfer, so everything is clean on paper. I let the silence sit for a moment. Which family account? I asked. My mother's smile didn't waver. Our joint account. The savings account. The one with $67,000 in it, I said. Not a question. A ledger entry. We can discuss the exact amounts later. The important thing is that the family is taken care of. The contracts attorney cleared his throat and slid a document toward me. It was a mutual release of claims, drafted to look routine and read like a favor. By signing, I would acknowledge the transfer as a voluntary family gift, waive any right to repayment, and release all parties from liability. It was, I noticed, dated 2 weeks prior, before my mother had even called to invite me to dinner. She had been very sure I would sign. I picked up the document. I read it from the first line to the last. The attorney watched me read with the expression of a man who had done this many times before and found it mildly tedious. This is well drafted, I said. My mother relaxed visibly. I'm glad you understand. I didn't say I'd sign it. The temperature in the room changed. My mother leaned forward. I need you to be reasonable about this. Your sister needs a foundation. You have your career, your condo. You've always been the one who lands on her feet. We just needed you to help this one time. This one time? I said. The way it was one time when you used my credit score to co-sign her car loan, and one time when I covered her rent for 4 months when she moved to Austin, and one time when I paid the hospital bill she ignored until it went to collections. Family helps family, my mother said, the warmth leaving her voice entirely now. Yes, I said. It does. I reached into my bag. I set 3 documents on the table. I set them down slowly, one at a time, the way you lay cards at a table where you've already seen everyone else's hand. The first was a letter from my bank, dated 5 weeks prior, confirming that a fraud investigation had been opened at my request regarding unauthorized wire transfers from a joint account. My name was listed as the complainant. My mother's name was listed as the subject. The room was very quiet. My mother stared at the letter. Then she looked up at me. The transfers were made from an account funded entirely by my income, I said. 7 years of paycheck deposits. Not a single dollar from any other source. I have the complete deposit history. The second document was a notarized affidavit from my bank's records department, confirming that of the $67,412 transferred, 100% of the funds originated from my direct deposit paychecks and personal tax returns, with my name as the sole depositing party on record. My sister made a small sound. My father had stopped cutting his pot roast. This is a misunderstanding, my mother said. Her voice had shifted into a register I recognized, the one she used when she was afraid but hadn't decided to admit it yet. You were on the account together. I had every right. Joint access isn't joint ownership, I said. My attorney explained the distinction at length. So did the detective assigned to the case. The contracts attorney picked up the fraud letter and read it carefully. He set it down. He closed his portfolio. I noticed he did not reach for his pen. Mom, my sister said. Her voice was small. You said she agreed to this. She would have agreed, my mother said. Not to my sister, but to the table. To the logic she had built in her own mind. She always comes through. She always does. She, I said, is sitting right here. My mother turned to me. She had cycled through warmth and then command, and now she was arriving at something raw. Do you understand what you're doing? That money saved your sister's business. It saved her livelihood. Are you really going to prosecute your own family over a savings account? This was the moment I had rehearsed, though not with words. I had rehearsed it by sitting very still on difficult nights and reminding myself what I actually owed versus what I had been told I owed. Those are different ledgers. I set the third document on the table. It was a single-page summary, printed from a spreadsheet I had built over 5 weeks. Every financial transfer I had made on behalf of my family over the past 11 years. Car loan co-signatures, rent coverage, medical bills, the security deposit my mother told me was a loan and never mentioned again. Emergency cash sent through Venmo in amounts small enough that I had forgotten most of them until I pulled my transaction history. The total at the bottom of the page was $114,280. I slid it toward the contract's attorney. Not my mother. That's what I've contributed to this family since I was 20, I said. Not including the $67,000 taken without my knowledge or consent. I'm not prosecuting anyone over a savings account. I'm prosecuting someone for theft. Whether that moves forward is currently in the hands of people I don't control. The contract's attorney looked at me with different eyes than he'd walked in with. When was the investigation opened? He asked. 5 weeks ago, I said. The same week I discovered the transfers. He looked at my mother. Were you aware of an active investigation? She didn't answer him. Because if you were, he said, setting down the mutual release of claims, and you've attempted to obtain a signed waiver from the complainant without disclosing that, without advising her to seek independent counsel, I'm not in a position to continue in this capacity. He stood. He picked up his portfolio. I'm sorry. I wasn't briefed accurately on the circumstances of this matter. My mother stood too, her chair scraping back. Sit down. We are not finished. I am, he said. Good evening. He left. I heard the front door close, then the sound of his dark sedan starting in the driveway. My father was looking at me now. He had the expression of a man who had suspected a storm for a long time and was not exactly surprised by the rain. My sister started crying. The tears were real, I think. She hadn't known everything. That was perhaps the only thing I felt anything adjacent to grief about my sister, had been handed a version of events that made her complicit, without fully understanding what she'd been handed. She would have to sort that out on her own. I had carried enough of what belonged to other people. You want to destroy this family, my mother said. She was standing now, her hands flat on the table. Over money, over paper, over $67,000 that I earned, I said. And over 11 years of being told that my role in this family was to fund everyone else's comfort while mine didn't count. I was calm. I want to be precise about that. I was not shaking. I was not performing composure. I was simply done. I love you. I have always loved you. But I have spent my entire adult life being the infrastructure for this family, and I am finished. You're being dramatic, she said. And even now, even in this moment, she believed it. The investigation is real, I said. The documents are real. What happens next isn't entirely up to me. But I want you to hear this part clearly. I stood up. I picked up my bag. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because the version of me who would sign that paper and absorb this and move on and be fine, she doesn't exist anymore. You needed her to keep existing. I understand that. But she's gone. I drove home with the windows cracked. The spring air was cool, and smelled like cut grass and distance. My phone rang 4 times before I turned the ringer off. I let the calls fall into voicemail and kept driving, both hands on the wheel, watching the streetlights pass overhead like the marks on a ruler measuring how far I had come. There are things I wish I could explain to people who haven't lived inside a family like mine. Not for sympathy, I have never wanted to be pitied, but because there's a particular kind of exhaustion that has no name in ordinary language. It's the exhaustion of loving people who treat your love as a resource to be harvested. Of being the one who is praised for being strong while the strength is quietly pulled out of you, thread by thread, until you are hollow and still being told you're fine, because you're still standing. I was standing, but I had learned the difference between standing and thriving, and I had decided, somewhere between the bank statement and the attorney's office, that I was finished confusing the two. The investigation moved through its stages over the following 3 months. I won't describe it in procedural detail because it was not dramatic. The law is mostly paperwork and waiting. What I will say is that my documentation was thorough, that my attorney was exceptional, and that wire transfer records are a very difficult thing to argue against when they are time-stamped and itemized and cross-referenced with paycheck deposits in your name. My mother retained her own attorney. There were calls, through channels, suggesting a civil resolution, a repayment arrangement, an acknowledgement, I replied, through my attorney, with a number the full $67,000 and a payment timeline, and a requirement that both figures be legally binding. I was told this was unreasonable. I said I would see them in the appropriate venue. Then, my sister called me directly one evening. She was not crying this time. She sounded tired in a way I recognized, because I had sounded that way myself for most of my 20s. Did you know? I asked her. Before that dinner, did you know where the money came from? She was quiet for a long time. I knew she had access to savings. She said it was joint money. She said you'd agreed. I didn't agree. I know that now. I believed her. I also knew that believing her and being able to resume a relationship were not the same thing. Some repairs take longer than the damage took to happen. We said goodbye, and I thought we might find our way back to each other eventually, over years, if she chose it. But that was a bridge for another season. My mother and I did not speak for 4 months. When we finally did, it was because she called on a Wednesday afternoon and I answered, and neither of us said anything about attorneys or transfers or family dinners for the first few minutes. She asked about my condo. I told her the kitchen renovation I had been planning was almost done. She said she'd always liked my kitchen, even when it was small. I said thank you. We talked for 11 minutes and then said goodbye. It was not forgiveness. I want to be honest about what it was. It was an acknowledgement that she was my mother and I was her daughter, and that would always be true. And somewhere inside that truth there was something worth preserving, even if we had to rebuild it from a different foundation. On my terms this time. The civil resolution came before the criminal matter was fully adjudicated. The settlement was for the full amount, structured over 18 months, with interest. It was legally binding. The relevant charges were reduced, contingent on compliance, and no further incidents, which my attorney had advised was a reasonable outcome given my mother's age and the absence of prior record. I was not entirely satisfied, but I was satisfied enough. I had not set out to destroy my family. I had set out to stop being destroyed by it. The money, when it came, I put back where it started. In savings. In a single holder account, at a bank my mother has never heard of, with a password I have memorized and kept nowhere else. There are people who will hear this story and ask if I feel guilty. The answer is no, and I want to explain why without apology. Guilt is what I feel when I do something wrong. What I did was refuse to absorb a wrong that was done to me. Those are not the same transaction. I spent 31 years paying the difference between those two things, and I am not willing to keep making that payment. There are also people who will hear this and ask if I should have handled it differently. More quietly. More graciously, given the benefit of the doubt, and had a conversation first and tried to work it out within the family before involving banks and attorneys and documents. And to those people I want to say gently, the reason I had documentation, the reason I had records, the reason I had an attorney contact on speed dial, is that I had spent 11 years watching what happened when I handled things quietly and graciously within the family. What happened was that $67,000 disappeared on a Tuesday. Silence is not the same as weakness. Sometimes silence is the sound of someone counting to 3 before they act. Sometimes the quietest response is the most devastating one, because it gives the other person no target to deflect from, and no chaos to use as cover. My mother had spent 3 decades outmaneuvering my emotions. She did not know how to outmaneuver my records. I think about the woman I was at 24, standing at a bank counter, adding my mother's name to an account because she said it was smart planning. I think about her the way you think about someone you knew a long time ago, with tenderness, and with distance. She was trying so hard to be the capable one. She had been told since childhood that being capable was the way she earned her place. She didn't yet understand that a place you have to earn every day isn't a place at all. It's a job with no benefits and no exit interview. I'm not her anymore. My condo kitchen renovation finished on a Friday. The new countertops are white quartz. The light fixture I've been saving a picture of for 2 years is finally installed above the island. I made dinner for 2 friends that evening, nothing elaborate, just pasta and good wine, and the particular comfort of a space that is entirely, legally, undeniably mine. My friend asked, over the second glass, whether I ever thought about what would have happened if I had just signed the paper that night at my parents' table. I thought about it for a moment. I would have walked out of that dinner $67,000 poorer, with a legally binding document releasing everyone from any obligation to account for it. I would have gone home and told myself it was fine, that I was strong, that I could handle it, and I would have been right. I would have handled it. I would have rebuilt the savings, slowly, carefully, the way I had built everything, and my mother would have looked at that as confirmation that I could handle anything, that there was no limit to what I could absorb, that the infrastructure never needed maintenance, and the next time she needed something, she would have known exactly where to reach. I think I would have disappeared, I told my friend, not all at once, but piece by piece, until there wasn't much left. She nodded. She refilled my glass. I didn't ruin my family, I said. I just stopped letting it run on me. Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family story you were written into? Tell me in the comments. And if you know the difference between being strong and being used, give this video a like. It means more than you know.